Okay, so in the last couple weeks on my channel, we've done a massive living room makeover with a ton of DIYs involved. We did a bedroom makeover for my sister. We did a bunch of little DIY mini makeovers around the house, and we rearranged my boyfriend's loft apartment. So if I'm being honest, I'm feeling a little tired and burned out. So I asked myself, Andrew, if you could do anything that you want to do this week, what would you do? And the answer is that I want to park myself in front of the TV and do a mindless little craft project. And so this week, that's exactly what we're gonna be doing, in theory at least. I'll get to that later. And that got me thinking. I used to be a big crafty kind of person even before my channel. As a child, I had every single one of those little Klutz art kits. I had the beadling one, the Sculpey clay one. Raise your hand in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I just loved making for the sake of making. And somewhere along the way, that joy started to wane, partly because I realized that a lot of what I was making was either useless or ugly or both. Now, our crafts are not required to be beautiful or useful, so if you're making something that brings you joy, rock on. However, as I become more aesthetic as an adult, I wanna make things that are gonna be beautiful and incorporate well into my home decor. I wanna gift things that are special and that will stand the test of time. So this week, as we do a chill, casual craft in theory, I'm also gonna be sharing some ideas that I have for crafts that you can make at home, something that's gonna be a little bit repetitive, a little bit mindless, but end up with a product that's really beautiful, kind of designy, and something that you can be proud that you made that is adding beauty to the world. I'm also feeling a little bit chatty this week, so I'd love to update you on some new things that are happening here on the channel and in my life. So pull up a chair, get a hot drink, pull out your crafting project, whatever that may be, aesthetic or not, and let's make today a cozy crafting day. Okay, so first craft idea that we're gonna be doing in this video is some needlepoint. Now, as a child, I remember doing some cross stitching. Again, I can't really think of anything that I made that I would love to have today. And so maybe subconsciously I've written off needlepoint as something that is either like overly crafty or overly grandma. However, a couple months ago at the REISSUED, there was this little pillow that came in. Didn't love the colors on this, but I thought the pattern was kind of cool, and it made me rethink needlepoint as something that's more in the line of like handmade rugs, or that kind of kilim Turkish rug kind of feel. These things that are handmade and really beautiful, that have rich colors and rich patterns. Why not take needlepoint in that direction and make something that would be really beautiful and aesthetic for my home? So I started looking around for design inspiration, and I kept coming up with these Tibetan tigers. I saw this Jonathan Adler pillow that I thought was kind of fun, maybe a little bit saturated for me, but it does have that needlepoint texture. I also found this pillow that was over $500, which is crazy, but I like the kind of tones that are happening here. It's a little bit more muted. So I think I want to kind of merge these two together. So I ended up finding this graphic on a rug that I really liked, and I took it to a website called Pixel Stitch, I think. Basically, you upload your photo and it turns it into a needlepoint pattern. Now, I had to play around with settings a little bit here to get what I wanted. I'm only going to be using, I think, like maybe 5 to 7 colors. However, I think I had it turned up to 20 different colors when I did this, because if I reduced the number of colors too much, it wouldn't give me enough definition that I was looking for. So I'm gonna work with the 20 color or so version and then kind of pick and choose which color I'm using as I go. It's gonna be kind of a loose thing here, but I think I can get the idea of what I'm looking for. To decide on the size of pillow that I was looking for, I pulled out some options of pillows that I already had. This H&M velvet pillow that's square, I think is a little bit larger than I would want. And then I thrifted this pillow cover from Pottery Barn. That's a similar kind of look that we're going for. I still think this is a bit large, so I ended up making the width of my design around 12 inches, which put the length somewhere around 19 inches, I think. I'm gonna be able to make this as a custom pillow, so I'm not super worried about matching a specific pillow size. For the needlepoint canvas, I got this size 14 canvas on Amazon. That's 14 stitches per inch. This was around $20 or so, I think. Some of them could get really expensive. I got this one because it was on the cheaper end. Most of what I could find at Michael's and such were like those plastic canvases, which we definitely don't want to work with. This one I think is like a polyester blend or something. I think it will work fine and have enough stiffness for what I need. So we have our dimensions and our canvas size, so I can finalize the pattern on Pixel Stitch, export this, and have something to work from here. Now, for yarn, this is where something that should be simple starts to be really complicated. I have a habit of making everything more complicated than it has to be, but it's part of what makes it fun, you know? So I could have gone out and bought several different colors of yarn for this. However, I thought, I already have some white and black yarn in my stash, why not use that? I also have some leftover dye from some previous projects. So why not use what I have and dye my own yarn? The only problem here is that the yarn that I had was acrylic and the dye that I had was for natural fibers only. So rather than going out and buying a different dye and maybe not getting a great result, I thought I would go ahead and get some 100% wool yarn to work with the dye that I have. So I ordered some on Amazon, and then I told my mom about this project and she's like, why did you order yarn? I have so much stuff from Grandma Shirley's house. So I have all of this yarn here. I only took part of it. There was way more, but I think this is gonna work perfect for this project, and it was 100% wool and totally free. So that's a win. So let's start dyeing our yarn. I have 3 colors here: orange, wine, and denim blue. And so I was thinking that we could do an orange tiger with kind of like a murky blue background. To prepare my yarn for dye, I wound it around my arm a bunch of times to create these little individual bundles. I wanted to do this partly because we're gonna do several different colors, but also because I wanted to make sure this could dry out once I got the dye in there. So I made a bunch of different bundles. Probably didn't need this many, but I kept going back and forth on how much I wanted for each area, and I was terrified of not dyeing enough yarn, so I started making more bundles. So let's start dyeing with the orange first. The process for dyeing this yarn was actually pretty simple. I'm heating up like 1.5 gallons of water and then adding in my dye. I started with a combination of orange and wine to get something that was kind of a murkier burnt orange. I think I ended up adding some denim blue in as well to murky that up even more. You know I love murky colors, but getting a balance of something that was really saturated and murky in the right way is a little bit tough with dye. I'm still figuring that out. So this entire process had a lot of trial and error, adding in different colors, testing the dye on little strips, but once I had something that was workable enough, I went ahead and added in my yarn. So yeah, fingers crossed that I'm dyeing enough yarn here. Once I get the color that I'm looking for, I can put the yarn in, swirl it around a bunch, and leave it in for a while until I achieve the color that I'm looking for. I know that it's gonna be a little bit darker when it's wet, so I wanna make sure that we're getting dark enough here. For the orange, I left it in for quite a while, and I kind of feel like it hit a ceiling where it just wouldn't take the dye anymore. So at that point, I felt satisfied with that, and we can go outside and rinse this out with the hose. Now, if you love a handmade look but you aren't much of a crafter, or if you're worried that you won't finish your handmade projects in time for this holiday season, head on over to Uncommon Goods, which is the sponsor of today's video. Uncommon Goods is an online marketplace for original and handmade gifts that you won't find anywhere else. You can browse by age, relationship, interest, or occasion, so that you can zero in on the perfect gift for many different kinds of people at multiple price points. So another gift from my mom, I got this little tree face bird feeder. She loves whimsical statement art pieces like this, so I just know she's gonna love this. And for my dad, I got this magnesium relief and recovery body butter that soothes sore joints and muscles. You know he's working really hard on the channel and in general, so I think he deserves some relief. Plus, I think that the packaging here is so cute and the ingredients look great, and I've had good luck with topical magnesium products in the past, so I think this should work pretty well. Whenever you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses, so get your gifting game on for this holiday season or for any occasion by clicking my link down in the description to get 15% off your purchase. I think gifts are better when they're unique and special and uncommon, so head on over to Uncommon Goods and get your shopping started. Okay, back to dyeing our yarn. To switch between colors, I left some of the dye in the pot and diluted it a lot. I wanted to get kind of a lighter, just barely off-white color, so I left some of the dye in there, added a lot of water, heated that up again, and then kind of mixed a little bit. To get that super light color, I went ahead and took the dye pot outside and literally just dunked the yarn in, pulled it out, and hosed it off right away. I can always make this darker, but I can't go back, and it's surprising how quickly the yarn absorbs the dye. followed the same process, adding a bit more wine dye to get kind of a blushy pink. And now we're gonna make this a lot more blue to see if I can get that murky blue background that I'm looking for. And this is where my good luck kind of ran out. Again, I was wanting this to be kind of a murky green, blue, gray kind of color. So in theory, I thought that if I mix some of the denim blue with some orange, it would give me something kind of greenish brown, kind of in the middle. However, I found that the denim blue had a very strong kind of purple undertone, and any little remnants of wine that was in the dye mix was not helping with this. So it felt like when I added more blue, it went really purple, but when I added more orange, it just went super brown and kind of gray. So I kept adding and adding, going back and forth. I put in all of my orange, all of my blue, and at that point I had no other options. So we're just gonna go ahead and dye this and see what happens.
So I was so close to being 4 for 4 on these colors, but I'm not sure I'm loving the blue-gray color. It just leans a little bit purple, and I would rather it be more green. So I'm probably gonna sleep on it, but I might end up buying some green dye or yellow or blue or something to kind of give this a bit more of a tealy vibe and less of like a purpley gray vibe. Man, I was so close.
Okay, so second crafting idea here that can create some beautiful aesthetic results, knitting. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but knitting is something that I've also done for a really long time, and I like the repetitive nature of it. If you're a beginner, you can do something really simple and still end up with a product that's really beautiful and effective. But as you get more advanced, you can start doing some cables or some color combinations, and that keeps it a little bit more interesting. So a couple things that I've knitted over the years. I made this pillow cover for my grandma Shirley. This was a super simple knit, just like 1 or 2 cables down the middle, and it's quick. I know I give throw pillows a hard time, and no, you don't want too many of them, but if you're looking for a relatively quick knitting project, this pillow is like 18 by 18 or 20 by 20, so it did not take long at all to make this. And I think this looks like something that you would find at like Pottery Barn. It's really elevated, really classic, so I love that look. Within the same vein, but a little bit more advanced, I did end up knitting my own stockings for Christmas a couple years back. Again, these are a little bit more advanced. I will link this pattern down below if I can find it. It's been a while. But again, these are not too big of a project. They're a really fun knit, and I think the result is really beautiful. And finally, I mentioned in my living room video that I knitted this blanket here. This was a really fun knit. This was maybe probably over 10 years ago that I made this now, but I found the pattern in this book called Knitted Afghans. I think you might be able to get your hands on this still. If so, I'll link it below as well. But I thought this pattern was super fun. Just 2 colors needed here. It's not a very large blanket, so it's maybe not the most useful, but it looks nice over the back of a chair. And I think the pattern is really beautiful and adds kind of a modern graphic look to this room that's a little bit more traditional. One of the things that I like about needlepoint and knitting is that it's so easy to find thrifted yarn, especially if you can land on a pattern that doesn't require a ton of the same color. It's such a great opportunity to reuse materials, to pick them up for cheap, and I also think that knitting feels especially cozy in the autumn and winter months. I remember last year I showed you these little knitted balls that I made to go on a garland. I ended up doing some sewn ones out of a thrifted sweater as well, but these were a pretty easy and fast knit if you're looking for just a little project to do in one sitting. Just knit a little ball and then you can put it down and start again with another one later. So with most of our yarns dyed in the right shade, we're ready to start the needlepoint process. Again, I've never actually done needlepoint like this before, so I'm kind of figuring this out as I go. To start with, I thought it would be a good idea to mark the canvas with a water erasable pen every 10 stitches so that I would have kind of a landmark to reference as I go. I don't want to be working in with different colors and then realize that things aren't aligned. So these marks will be really helpful as a guide, even if I mess up a little bit. They also help me know how big to cut my canvas. So once I've drawn up my edging marks on both sides, I can cut the canvas just a little bit bigger to size. And of course I got bored making these marks, so I'll fill in the rest of them later. But for now, let's get started with the stitching. I watched a tutorial on basic needlepoint that was reflected really nicely here in this little card that came with the canvas. We're gonna be doing a continental stitch, which is essentially just stitching on the diagonal. You go from the lower left corner to the upper right corner when going from right to left, and go from the upper right corner to the lower left corner on the way back from left to right. Right away, I realized that I cut my yarn way too long. Ordinarily when I hand sew, I like to have a nice long thread like this because I hate tying off and starting again, but this yarn is pretty thick for this hole size for my canvas, so I found that it wanted to knot up really easily, or even if I could get it through, it would be kind of threadbare by the time I got to the end of the yarn anyway, so I knew right away that it was going to be better to work with shorter yarn pieces on this. I started in with the black because I thought it could act as sort of an outline, and then we'll fill in around with our other colors later. And this is looking pretty good, but I'm realizing now that this is gonna take forever. So let's jump to another craft idea. All right, crafting idea number 3, origami. Yes, it's complicated when you get started, but if you're doing the same process over and over again, it can get really repetitive. You can find a flow, you can memorize the pattern, and it can give you such beautiful and unique results. In my past holiday videos, I've shown you how I've made these little origami stars. I have some of them on my Christmas tree usually, but I also like to do them out of spare wrapping paper to put on gifts. I think they look fantastic. I also dug through my Instagram and found these brown paper bag ornaments and wreath that I made in 2019. This was back when I was in my New York apartment. I was wanting to do some decor that I could just throw away at the end of the season, so I made these ornaments and this wreath out of brown paper bags and then sprayed them with this leftover fake snow that I had from a video shoot. So that made these totally free and gave a really unique modern take on Christmas. Also from the New York apartment days, I found this giant piece of cardboard on the street and then made all of these little origami triangle shapes that were glued to it. I made these out of this silver reflective paper that I got secondhand. This paper is amazing. It was super thick, so these held their shape literally like a sculpture. Again, this was a super repetitive process, so once I got the hang of it, I could just zone out, make a bunch of these, and then I glued them on to create this kind of like, almost like acoustic wall tile kind of effect, but it was reflective and it was so beautiful with different kinds of lighting on it. I actually wanted to bring this with me when I moved to Georgia, but the movers lost it. In any case, I've been wanting to do another project like this. I just don't have a good spot in my house for it, but I think that something like this can work with all kinds of design. You know I love an origami Japanese inspiration anywhere, so I think that a wall statement like this is really beautiful and actually really simple to make. And finally, I do have a video on the DIY origami lamp that is in my bedroom. That one was pretty tricky, but it was more of a one-off project that didn't take very long, so if you're not looking to spend hours and hours folding, that one might be a good one to check out. So those are the crafting ideas that I have so far. I wanted to include things that, one, I had personally done before so that I could show you some video or photos, but also projects that I felt got to a stage where you could kind of tune out a little bit mentally and maybe listen to a podcast or watch a TV show. Whereas a project like my favorite wood inlay tables that I've been making this year, those require a little bit more focus, so I don't think that I would be able to tune out in the same way. One project that I'm wanting to take on that I think would be really fun is quilting. I've never done quilting before. Obviously, I've done a lot of sewing, but I think that I could do some really cool graphic things with thrifted fabric, but also just maybe do some hand quilting on more solid color fabrics. Again, I'm wanting to do a really beautiful velvet blanket for the living room, so I'm trying to source fabric for that, but hopefully I'll be able to find what I'm looking for and create a base and then do some hand quilting on that as well. Okay, so I did end up deciding to dye the background color yarn. Again, the gray shade was not working for me, so I picked up some aqua and some dark green dye, and I think we'll try to mix these together to create something better. Okay, so I have reached the point in my needlepoint where I'm feeling pretty good about how we're moving forward, and I can just kind of do this a little bit more mindlessly. I'm not having to really look at the pattern much, I'm just filling in. So I thought we would sit down and chat a little bit about what's new. First of all, I got a lavalier mic, so I can sit down and chat in front of the camera and not feel like I have to be too close or that my audio quality is gonna be crappy, because I don't love to hear about that in the comments because I know that you're right. Similarly, I feel self-conscious doing this kind of talking to the camera thing because I know there are always comments down there that are like, don't talk so much, we just wanna see you do it. And again, I don't really pay much mind to comments like that unless I agree with it. And I don't know, I guess I just find that for myself personally, I enjoy watching videos that are a little bit more visual, a little bit more action-packed. I also find that when I edit my videos, I find it really hard if I hear myself rambling on and didn't really get to say things exactly the way that I wanted to say them. But yeah, I mentioned recently that I just turned 33 and I'm trying to let go of that perfectionism a little bit. So here we go, let's chat. So what's new with me? Feeling overwhelmed lately. My video schedule has been really action-packed, so that's a lot of it. I also just feel like this is a season of life that has a lot of change, and change is good, but sometimes you just want it to stop and just be the same for like 2 seconds, and that's just not what's happening right now. I just feel like I'm kind of scrambling and I can't catch my breath. So yeah, that's part of why I wanted to do this video, was just to kind of remind myself to stay calm and enjoy the process. It's funny, you know, Matt is a very creative person and he and I have been, you know, making things together lately, and he's someone that just like really enjoys creative process and exploring every avenue and just trying and seeing what happens. And I found myself having a hard time with that because I feel like my channel has conditioned me to really want things to be right the first time. If it's not right the first time, that just creates more work. And so I feel like in a lot of sense, like I don't enjoy making in the way that I used to. Making itself is a means to create videos and to connect with you all, which is one of my favorite things now. I love when we're live in the chat together. I love seeing what you guys have to say in the comments. I love sharing what I'm making with you, but often the process of making itself, I find to be very stressful. And now that I have a YouTube channel, every time I do anything creative, I have this like nagging sense of I should be picking up the camera, I should be filming this should be content. And I don't know, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, it's just a switch for me where if creative projects used to be the place where I would relax and unwind, and then that becomes my job, what is my new mode of relaxation? What is my new mode of release and expression? You know, it's one thing, I don't think it's good for me to feel that way all the time, to be at that level of stress all the time, but also I find that I stress out my parents. I feel like I'm stressing out Matt. And so it's created a little bit of like self-reflection for me of like, how can I not be in a heightened state of like drive and stress and perfectionism and more all the time? So yeah, that's on my mind. I'm working on that. In other news, one aspect of my life that's been a big thing over the last couple of months is my skin. I've talked about it on my channel before. Some people say, stop talking about your skin. We don't care. You look great. And while I appreciate the sentiment there, I feel like feeling like your flesh is melting off your face for months was a pretty big deal for me. Yeah, it was very, very itchy. I was very self-conscious about it. As you can see, it's gotten a bit better. So yeah, after a couple of months of hoping that my self-care at home would make things better, Matt was finally like, we need to get you to see a dermatologist. This is not getting better. So we went to a dermatologist back in September, I think, and he prescribed me some sort of steroid and it made me better. However, I developed a rash all over the rest of my body. I think I had an allergic reaction. So we went to a different dermatologist, and I am now in a clinical trial for a new eczema drug. This is the second phase of the trial, so it has been FDA approved. This round of the trial is about finding the correct dosage. So often when I go in, I will get my injection, my skin will gradually get better throughout the week, my skin will be totally clear, and then depending on the timeline, maybe the drug starts to wear off a little bit before I get another injection and my skin gets bad again. So it's just been a fluctuation. At this point, I don't really care so much about what I look like. It's more about how I feel. So yeah, that's been a big part of my life lately. It's just eating up a lot of my time in a way that I don't really have time for it to, which is adding to my stress as well. But it's just good to be getting some relief again. In other news, the reissue team is growing. I hired an editor Austin. He's only gonna be working on short form content for me right now, but my hope is that eventually he'll be able to start working on long form stuff as well. Basically, I really enjoy making long form content for YouTube. That's what I feel really comfortable doing and that I'm getting better at. So yeah, Austin is working with me to edit down some of my long form stuff into shorter form content as well. So hopefully I'll start being more active in shorts here on YouTube, also on Instagram and Facebook. So that's very exciting. I also am really happy to be collaborating with someone on the kind of editing side of my process. I work with my parents a lot and with Matt on projects, and I really like that. It's very lonely to do this by myself all the time. So as much as I like a project where I can do it all myself, like a mural video, often that means that every step of that process I am alone. Which is fine, but there's something nice about being able to collaborate with someone else as a part of that process. So I do that with my parents or with Matt on projects. I do that with Katie as a part of growing the business. And so it's nice to have that part of my channel and my work be involved with someone else. But the editing process has always been something that's just me. So even though, there's aspects of editing that I actually do enjoy, but it's the overwhelm of feeling like I have to do every part of this myself. So it's really nice to have Austin as an outside eye on my channel. We're looking at doing a little bit of rebranding. And so it's really nice to start to have all aspects of my channel become collaborative and involve people that are good at various things and make my work and my content the best that it can be. All right, everybody, I think it's obvious by now that I'm not gonna finish this tiger needlepoint pillow for this video. As much as I love to give you guys a before and after, I think it's also nice to give a reminder that some projects take time and that can be worth it. It's also a nice reminder for me that it's okay to create without the expectation of outcome. So often now I feel like a little bit of the joy of creation gets sucked out of my life because I'm so pushing for deadlines to get things out for a video. And so the idea that I can just kind of work on this in my spare time, especially late at night, when it gets dark at like 4 p.m. now, those hours once the sun goes down, it can be really nice to sit with my needlepoint and just kind of mindlessly work on something to make progress over time and to not be stressed about finishing it within a week or a couple weeks. I hope that I gave you some good crafting ideas and inspiration here. I think that in the age of everything being available on demand and everything being automated, there's gonna be a real renaissance of things that are handmade and that take time and that were made with love. So if you're feeling inspired to get crafting, or if you have other ideas for your favorite craft project that is also aesthetic and beautiful and can live as an heirloom in your home, drop those down in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.